This generation seeks a sign. Why? Because they want to be so overwhelmed that they don't have to make the choice to believe. That they'll just be able to receive, and it'll be so overwhelming. And the Lord doesn't work that way. He wants us to make the choice freely to follow Him and believe. In the first reading today, we hear now from the beginning of the letter of St. James, and he says, "Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters." And what's the joy that we're to consider? How wonderful everything is in this lifetime, right? No, consider it all joy when you encounter various trials. Right. I don't know about you, but trials don't usually give me a whole lot of joy on the natural level. And yet he says, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." And so he's inviting us in faith to look how these trials can be a way of helping us to grow closer to Almighty God. That God either gives us these trials, or at least allows these trials, because He is saying, "I love you. I love you so much, and I don't want you to stay as little children. I want you to grow and mature in the spiritual life." And so these trials are there to help you grow. He says, "And let perseverance be perfect, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." You see that as we go through these trials, it means that when we see them in faith, it will produce perseverance. If we don't see them in faith, it's going to produce what? Grumbling and cynicism and other sorts of things. But if we see them in faith, they will produce perseverance. And if we allow that then to be perfected, then we'll be lacking nothing. That God is saying, "Do you see? I have so much more in store for you." And then he goes on and says, But if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and He will be given it." So he should ask in faith, not doubting. So what is wisdom? It's not just having some sort of knowledge from the world, but rather wisdom is the ability to recognize God's love moving in my life and the lives of those around you. So we look and we say, can we recognize God's love moving in our lives and the lives of those around us? In some circumstances, of course, we can. We recognize it clearly. For instance, in the sacraments, the great graces that God pours out. But it's in those trials. Can we see God's finger of love in those trials? That takes divine wisdom. That takes divine wisdom, not our own wisdom, to be able to recognize God's finger of love. Not God's smiting finger, God's finger of love, allowing those trials for our sake to grow. And if we don't have that wisdom, or don't have it completely, which is all of us, we should ask in faith. Ask in faith, not doubting that God will give it to us. And then God will give to all generously, ungrudgingly, and we will be given it. And so we're looking and saying, these trials. Now, just because I'm saying this doesn't mean that I've got this down. I'm still working on this, right? It's not like hey, you need to be where I am. No, I'm looking and saying, that's where we need to be. Let's go together. But we look and say, when we see these trials, a lot of times we get downhearted, we get discouraged, we let our hands fall in. We say, how can God allow this to happen? All this stuff. But He's saying, I have this for a reason. And if you can look beyond and see that there is a purpose to this, that there's a purpose to this trial, then you will grow. If you allow yourselves to see my love moving through this moment, through this struggle, through this trial, and you persevere in faith, you will grow. You will grow and lack nothing. So let us ask Almighty God for that wisdom today, to be able to see His finger of love moving in our lives, especially in those struggles, in those trials, in those hard times, so that we may persevere and that we may then have God and so lack nothing.